Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the story of you through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, producer of the show, and I'd like to welcome the host, Ian Cron. Ian, how are you doing?
I am remarkably well.
Hey, we were just in Dallas. Let's talk about that.
Well, that was a great 24 hours, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
You and I, my son Aiden, we went out to Dallas so that I could do a live podcast with the Minimalists.
Yeah, man.
Our friends Josh and Ryan.
Love those guys.
I do too. What a fun night.
It was. We were at the Improv in Dallas, Texas.
Yep. From a couple hundred people. And they interviewed me for about 45 minutes. Yeah. And we just had the room was buzzy and it was a really, really fun night. And
it really was, yeah.
It was really the first an early stop on a tour for my new book.
Come on, let's talk about it. Hold it up.
Right, so this is, by the way, the uncorrected proof. It's in soft cover because it's a galley.
It's called a galley.
And this goes out to, major publications for reviews and different people that we hope will dig it and talk about it. So it will be in hardcover and much fancier. However,
yes,
the story of you, an Enneagram journey to becoming your true self. It drops on December 28th, but you can pre-order it now on Amazon, which I encourage people to do.
Yep.
I am so pumped for people to get their hands on this book and to start this new chapter of conversations.
And you can go to ianmorgancron.com/the story of you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give just a little primer on what it's about? Because I'm pumped about this, by the way. I mean, I've actually been able to read the book. I'm super excited about it. So
here's a premise for you.
Yeah.
I think all of us live in stories, right? All of us has a narrative or a story we tell ourselves about who we are,
right? And
who we tell others who we think we are, right? We really acquire this story as a little person, right? And that story actually comes to define us, and it actually, in many ways, shapes our personality. Right?
We act out of it sometimes knowingly and many times unknowingly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, in this broken world, is that many of us end up in broken stories.
Right.
And those broken stories may have helped us as little kids to understand what was happening to us. But it's so sad. Some people bring early childhood broken, mistaken stories about who they are, what their value is, about what the world is like into adulthood.
Right.
They never get rewritten. Right. They never get edited.
Right.
They just drag them into adulthood, and they're trapped in the wrong narrative. It distorts it makes them unhappy. It distorts their personality. I've seen people stuck in bad stories that has ruined their lives.
Right. Yeah.
It's ruined their lives.
Yeah.
And so what I'm excited about is when I get to tell a person, you don't have to stay in that old story.
Right.
It's broken.
Yeah.
Right? You have the freedom to rewrite the narrative of your life. Now,
it's so exciting to me.
Now, here's the kicker.
Yeah.
I think that the 9 Enneagram types, yes, they are personality types. And I would say that they're 9 stories that people acquire as little people, right? And live in without any sort of knowledge that some of it is not going to work for you.
And now, so what argument would you say, because I know you have one, to people that say only 9 stories?
Yeah. So, in literary criticism, it's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a very thick book. It must be 1,300 pages. It's called The 7 Basic Plots. I mean, in literature and film, critics, right? I mean, literary critics, highly educated people, many of them would say there's only 7 basic plots in all of literature.
Yeah.
Right?
Every book you've ever read, every movie you've ever watched. Yeah.
There are tragedies, there are comedies, there are romantic comedies, right? There's drama, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you watch a romantic comedy, you know how it's going to roll.
That's right.
It doesn't stop you from watching it.
That's right.
Right? You know that different stories have different runs.
Yeah.
And so, it's not a surprise that maybe there are 9 stories, but let me put it how I would say it would be this way.
Yeah.
These 9 stories appear so often in the human population that we should pay attention to them.
That's good.
I don't know if they're the only 9 stories. All I know is that you see them so often that we should, take them seriously. And so, look, I'm not saying that your personality type is wrong. What I'm saying is that pretty much everybody lives in a broken story.
Right.
The Enneagram can help you find out what that story is and how you can rewrite it.
And the cool thing is this book helps illuminate the broken story that you're in.
Yes.
And how to rewrite your story.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Yes. And so, we have a little model in the book. It's called SOAR. And I know some people hate acronyms. I hate acronyms. But here's the deal. I've learned from 12-step recovery that acronyms can save your life, okay? Right. Like we have one in 12-step HALT, right?
Right.
Don't get hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? I just, that's a great little reminder to me.
Yeah.
So SOAR is C. And to C is to kind of look back at your story. Like, where did it come from? What would I name it, right? What is the old story? Like, see it. Right? And then the second is own it. And what that is just to own what it's done to you, right? Just see the cost of the story. And then the next one is awaken, right? And awaken is like, man, again, it involves the cost. It's just beginning to have your eyes opened to these new possibilities. Rewrite is when you can say, all right, how do I unwind those parts of my story that are dragging me down, right? That are dragging me down. And I love what Mo Willems, the author, says that I love this. He says, if you find yourself living in the wrong story, leave.
That's so good.
And anyway, I'm so excited for people to get their hands on the book and learn about, man, I could live in a new story. And that's the exciting thing is when you tell people that, they look at you a little sideways and they go, wait a minute, you mean I'm not like fated or destined to live in this old story? Like I just thought, what can I do about it? Nothing. It's just how things happened. It's like what got done to me. Yeah. It's like, no.
Right. That's right.
You have the right. If you've been playing the victim or the martyr your whole life, you can recast yourself as the hero of that story.
Come on. I love that. Well, so again, we want to remind people to go to ianmorgancron.com/the story of you. That's right. Hold it up there. Take a look at it for those of you on video. And we have some more exciting things about the book that we're going to be rolling out in the weeks to come. But let's get to today's show. Man, we've got a fun guest today. Jon Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books, including his most recent Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done. He is an INC Magazine Top 100 leadership speaker, spoken to FedEx, Nissan, Microsoft, Chick-fil-A, Nokia. His latest book, Soundtracks, which he released in April, is already a bestseller, and we're talking about that today. Jon is a 7, and Ian asked the question when he first came into the studio, what have you been thinking today? What kind of thoughts have you been thinking? And it will blow you away. He gives real interesting insight into the mind of the 7. So he's quite an authority on soundtracks of the mind and overthinking. He actually says, overthinking is when what you think gets in the way of what you want. It's an epidemic of inaction and a tsunami of stuckness. The good news is there are simple, counterintuitive ways to turn all of that overthinking into action and reclaim time, creativity, and productivity to create the life you want. So this is a great interview. We get into all kinds of stuff. I know you're going to love this one, and I know you're going to love Jon. Really thrilled to have him in the studio with us today. So without any further ado, here is our guest, Jon Acuff, and your host, Ian Cron.
Jon Acuff, Enneagram 7, welcome to Typology.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Man, I'm looking forward to it too, man. We haven't had a chance to spend much time together, but we run into each other periodically.
Totally.
At different conferences pre-COVID.
Coffee shops, all over the
coffee
place.
shops, all of them. You got a brand new book, Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking.
Yeah.
Love the name.
I love it, man.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is a perfect conversation for typology and talking about 7s.
Good.
Because you all know about overthinking.
We do some of it. We definitely do some of it.
I want to know something.
Yeah.
If I got inside your head and I was listening to your stream of thought, what would it be like?
I mean, today it'd be like, man, he has cool dogs. It's nice to meet his dogs. Like, I wonder if they're related. Do those dogs know any tricks? Do those dogs know other dogs in this neighborhood? Are there other cool dogs, or is this it? Is this a cat neighborhood? I bet somebody on this street owns a ferret. I got a ferret vibe from some of these houses. Not like a ton of ferrets, but like one ferret is enough ferrets. When it comes to ferret, like things like that, or like, how did I park? Could I have parked better? I should have parked closer, but I have a park at the first spot you see as if it's the last spot that will ever exist. And since I'm by myself, I was like, I'm going to do the walk, and then I can get more steps in, and then I can compete with my daughter in the step challenge for the week because she's doing cross country. So yeah, it would be like that. That's a snippet.
I'm exhausted.
Wow.
Right? I know.
amazing.
Sevens, man.
You are 5s, 6s, and 7s. All of you are in the thinking triad. Oftentimes, sevens will, they can be really affectionate.
Yeah.
Right. All that optimism and that stuff and so you'll think, man, how can they be in that thinking triad? But y'all are thinkers, man.
Yeah. The regular triad sounds cooler because you get Japanese tattoos and stuff, but I feel like, the thinking triad, I don't know if we fight the Yakuza?
Ian just raised his forearm and showed us his tattoo. Yeah.
Is that new or old?
Oh, it's years old, a couple years old.
It looks pretty new.
No, it's about, I don't know, 3-4 years old or something like that. Right. Yeah. Just goes to show, I wasn't drunk.
Yeah. Every listener right now is like, I wonder what it's barbed wire around his arm. It's kind of think Panama City Beach, but slightly not as classy.
Think 6 margaritas in Panama Beach.
This is why he speaks in long sleeves. A lot of people don't get to see those Ian arms, as they call them.
Yeah, right. Well, that's also because in the corporate world, I'm always wearing long sleeves, when I do corporate gigs.
Yeah,
and it's like, it's 300 degrees in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Why is he wearing a long sleeve shirt? Everyone's in golf shirts.
Yeah. I wear sport coats because then I don't have to iron the shirt. That's to me, it's one of the hardest parts of public speaking is wrinkles. And so, like, when I show up at a hotel and I'm like, oh, man. There's no way to fold the shirt where it doesn't look like it was an accordion.
Right.
So now I just wear, like, sport coats over it and a complicated pattern because that'll hide wrinkles. But sometimes I'll show up at events.
It looks great on a Jumbotron. Looks like you're electric.
Looks great on a Jumbotron, but I'll show up I've had this 5 times happen, show up at the event, and I'm wearing the shirt they have in the photo. So there's a photo of me before I speak, and it looks like this poor kid, he's just out here trying to earn a second shirt. He's just out here tap dancing for nickels, trying to get himself, someday dare to dream, a whole second shirt just for me.
But it's the only shirt you ever had custom made, and that's why you wear it every single time, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to the book here, number 7 on the Enneagram. We've now gone off into about 16 different tangents, all of which I enjoyed enormously.
Sure.
But I really do want to talk about this book, and in part because I've been doing a lot of thinking about thinking, if you will. As a therapist, I'm always trying to help myself and other people make sense of or realize that their mind is out of its mind. Right? It just is. Right? We have 50 to 80,000 discrete thoughts every single day. That's just, according to, science, it's like, well, that's about, and most of them are repetitive. And most of them have a negative bias.
Yeah. The phrase I use in the book is fear comes free, hope takes work. You never have to go out and try to find a negative thought. Like, it'll find you.
Yes.
One of the things that came up in the research is that in the English language, there's not a good opposite for the word trauma. Where you say, this is a word that means overwhelming joy that hits you out of nowhere and stays with you for years and years and years and years and years. And so that, your brain will pick up stuff and remind you of stuff you did wrong 5 years ago. I mean, mine the other day reminded me of a birthday party that I had ruined because I ruined the surprise. And my brain was like, hey, remember 20 years ago when you worked with Tara and you ruined her husband's surprise party? Let's think about that while we're shopping for groceries.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, hey, that's not helpful.
And, those, as you were just saying, those thoughts then dictate the moodscape, right? How we feel, right, in the moment, which then determines how we act.
Yep.
Which then reinforces how we think, right? And then we just get into these unvirtuous cycles, right? Not good.
Well, and then your brain, I mean, with cognitive bias, starts to say, I'll go find examples of this thing you already feel.
Right.
So somebody the other day told me, I was talking to them about soundtracks and said, I think one of my broken soundtracks is I've been saying, I'm old. And I've started to notice, wow, I forgot that. Or wow, I'm slower at that. And I said, yeah, you've just given your brain an assignment.
Right.
The more you say I'm old, it starts to go, let's believe that. Let's really believe that.
Right.
I'll, with cognitive bias, find proof of that because the brain likes to believe what the brain already believes, and it just kind of spirals.
Right. Absolutely,
That's
man.
good.
It is good. And I do think that one of the major tasks for people in our contemporary world is decluttering the mind. We had the minimalists on recently.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And I got to talking about, I said, one of the places people need to practice minimalism is in their dang heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's just too much thinking. Thinking is overrated.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
The thing I've been telling people is we asked the PhD, this guy, Mike Peasley, who helps me with research, we asked 10,000 people if they struggle with overthinking. 99.5% of people said yes. I mean, we got survey responses where people would go, I couldn't finish the survey. It had 5 or 6 questions.
Right.
And that was before 2020. 2020 was catnip for overthinking because everything is a thing now. So like the other day, I met somebody and they went to shake my hand and I thought, should I refuse? Should I fist bump? Should I twist at the waist and give them an elbow instead? Should I shake their hand and then immediately put my whole arm into a vat of hand sanitizer as if to say, excuse me, while I wash off this deadly pandemic you just tried to murder me and my grandparents with? Then I started looking around the room. Are other people shaking? What does that say about us politically? Like, do you know what I thought 2 years ago when somebody shook my hand? Nothing. I just shook their hand. But now everybody, even if they weren't an overthinker before, has now have extra layers of thought on every single social interaction because of the last 2 years we've just experienced.
Right. Hey everyone, our kids are grown up, but let me tell you about something I wish I'd had when they were kids. It's called KiwiCo. KiwiCo creates accessible, hands-on projects for kids of all ages designed to make learning about STEAM, that's science, technology, engineering, art, and math, they make it fun. Each crate is designed by experts and tested by kids, offering fun opportunities to learn and explore at home. Delivered monthly, each box comes with all the supplies you need for that month's project, meaning no extra runs to the store. And now, as we switch from summer to fall with kids' minds turning to baking and Halloween and spending more time inside, what better time to foster their natural creative thinking and channel it into hands-on fun. With a new crate each month, kids can discover the science of magic, engineer a domino machine, and more. My assistant Wendy, for example, has 2 young boys, 8 and 10, and they were so excited to get their Tinker Crate and explore the science of slime. They love slime. I love slime. And their favorite part was getting to create it themselves. With KiwiCo's hands-on art and science projects, kids will learn new skills, build new experiences, and make connections to the broader world, all while you spend more quality time together tackling projects. So, scare up some fun this Halloween with KiwiCo. Redefine learning with play. Explore hands-on projects that build confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills. And get 50% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line with this code, Typology, Typology, at KiwiCo.com. That's right, folks, 50% off your first month at KIWICO.com. Use the promo code Typology. What do we do, John?
Well, there's a number of things we can do. I mean, I think one thing is starting with understanding you can choose your thoughts. I would argue most people don't understand they have that power or that permission. They think a thought is something that shows up on its own. It's something I have, not something to hone. Even my most type A, my 8s, or my 1s, whatever, are like detailed and they lay out their clothes the night before they go to the gym. They don't pick out their thoughts before a big meeting. I rarely meet somebody who goes, I got the big meeting on Thursday and I had a similar meeting go poorly and I know I picked up some broken soundtracks from that. I don't want those playing in this and ruining it. it because I got this soundtrack that they're trying to take advantage of me. I don't want that to spoil the business deal. So here's the 3 soundtracks I'm going to listen to internally when I'm in this meeting. We just let thoughts show up. So I think the first thing is recognizing you have the ability to choose your thoughts. You have the permission to do that. And then once you understand that, it opens up all these really practical tips and tools you can use.
Okay. Do you have, in the language of soundtracks, and we all have mental soundtracks,
Sure.
for sure, top 10 hits?
Well, I mean, top 10 hits, one would be, who am I to do that? Like, who am I to raise a kid? Who am I to write a book? Who am I to start a business? Who am I to have a podcast? Who am I to think I could move to Nashville and chase a dream? So who am I to do that? Another one would be, I'm too old. That's kind of in the family of I missed my moment, which is interesting. I always say that fear can be schizophrenic. It'll tell you you're too young, and then it'll tell you you're too old. And you go, when was I the right age?
Right.
Like there was no 10-minute window when I was 32 that fear was like, this is it, you're the right age.
Right.
So either I'm too young or I'm too old is another one. Those are kind of some popular stressful ones where you go, okay, I can hear this again and again and again. But that sense of being unqualified, or another one would be, I'll make a decision when I have all the information, but we haven't lived in an all information world in 100 years. You have to make decisions with enough information, and you get to choose that. So you see a lot of people get stuck going, as soon as I know this, this, and this, then I'll make those decisions. But those are some that I run into in various forms over and over and over again. And the language might change a little bit. Another one would be, you're just lucky. That was one that I had a podcast I was on, and during the middle of the podcast, the host got quiet, and I said, what? And he said, well, I just realized I have a broken soundtrack. And I said, what? And he said, well, I've been the #1 podcast in my category for the last 9 months. And what I've been telling myself over and over is, you're just lucky, you're just lucky, you're just lucky. He said, if a friend came over and they had worked really hard for 9 months on something, I'd never say you're just lucky. So if I wouldn't say it to them, why am I saying it to me? And so again, it's that sense of inadequacy. We did a study. I've got thousands of handwritten soundtracks from teenagers because I spoke at these big camps, and I'd ask them to write down what they were listening to. And a lot of them would say, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. And so that sense of enough. And so, and there are some positive ones, but most people, thoughts don't go healthy on their own. You have to steer them and guide them there. In the same way that I've never met somebody who accidentally got in shape, where they're like, I was binge watching Netflix. I just looked up. I was doing burpees. I don't even remember doing the burpees. You have to, if you want your mind to think good things, because the book, there's a couple things it talks about. One, your brain misremembers. Malcolm Gladwell's done amazing podcasts on that. Your brain isn't accurate. It has cognitive bias.
That's one with Peter Jennings, right? Was that the podcast?
No, it was Brian Williams, who thought he was on a helicopter that got attacked by a grenade, and
he defended him.
And he said, awesome. No, your brain. And so there's all these studies where people would write down where they were on 9/11, and 4 years later would say the exact opposite, and they'd go, "This is your handwriting." And they go, I don't know why I lied back then, but now I know it's this. So that's part of it is going, I think one of the mistakes people make is believing that if they have a thought, it must be true. And being willing to go, wait a second. So I teach, in the book, I teach 3 questions that I think I call them Trojan horse questions, because they're simple, the words aren't special, but when you ask them, there's truth inside. The first is it true? Is the thing I'm believing about myself, about this situation, whatever, true? Second question is it helpful? When I think it, does it move me forward or pull me back? Because some thoughts are true, but they're not helpful.
Right.
I talked to a manager of a company who said he got fired 12 years ago. And in that moment, he started to listen to this broken soundtrack that said, you could be fired again. And then that mutated into, if I see a door close on a meeting I'm not invited to, I might be about to be fired. So let's say he has, one of those situations a day. He's definitely invited to more meetings, not invited to meetings, but that's 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's 50 minutes, a week. Over a 12-year period, that's 62 8-hour work days. So is it true he could be fired? Totally. Anybody could be fired. Is it helpful to think that? It's not. Third question, is it kind? If I said it to a friend, would they still want to be my friend? And when you ask those questions, you'll be shocked how many of your thoughts aren't true, aren't helpful, aren't kind. And that's why I talk about what does it look like to retire that thought.
Hey, Typology Tribe. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for helping us bring you what I hope is great content every week. Now, you all know I'm a big proponent of counseling. Whether you feel like something is interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving certain goals, counseling is a great tool to help identify what those blocks are and then work through them. Yet finding a therapist can sometimes feel intimidating, but not with BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers online counseling at your own time and your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions plus text and chat with your therapist when it's convenient for you. These are licensed professional counselors who specialize in things like depression, anxiety, stress, relationships, LGBT matters, trauma, and grief. BetterHelp has counselors available worldwide and have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. And get this, if you're not satisfied with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time at no additional cost. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/typologypodcast. TYPOLOGYPODCAST.
So did you read The Untethered Soul? So in it, the author talks about this idea that if you were to put your mind into a body outside of yourself and you let that person walk next to you and they talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, you would first of all think that person's crazy.
Yeah, they're a monster.
They're a monster and they're crazy because they're all over the map. And a lot of, again, the negative cognitive bias is running, and you would just be like, I've got to get away from this person.
I need to change the locks. Like that person has keys to my house. I need to change the locks.
Absolutely. Okay. So you're an Enneagram 7.
Yeah.
The unconscious motivation of the 7 is a need to avoid distressing psychological and emotional states, right?
Yeah.
Or thoughts.
Totally.
Or situations.
Mm-hmm.
And their strategy for it, right, is through living very future oriented, right? Lots of trouble staying in the present moment.
Yeah.
Super hard, more than any other type. By entertaining escapades and adventures in their mind, planning them, thinking about them, overthinking about a world of unlimited possibilities, all in service to avoiding pain, right?
Yeah.
Pain.
I agree with that. I mean, I think like for me, it's like the most minor of inconveniences. So I always joke with friends if they say, let's go to this new restaurant, I go, what's the parking lot like? Is it street parking? Is it like one of those hipster restaurants that has 50 tables and 4 parking spaces? Like, is it?
I was in one of those last night in East Nashville.
It drives you
nuts.
nuts.
They're all in East Nashville.
Yeah, and so like I start and they'll go, well, do you want to hear what kind of food it is? I'm like, no. Just, is it a valet? Like, what do we got going? And I want to avoid the thought of the pain of I don't know what to do in the moment. I mean, but even on a Saturday, my wife, it drives her nuts if I go, hey, what are we doing today? What are we doing today? What are we doing today? And she'll go, we're doing it. Like, we're in it right now. Like, I'm reading a book, you're listening to a podcast, like, that's what we're doing. I'll go, but what are we doing next? What are we doing next?
Right.
And so, I have to catch myself because that's me trying to prepare for the future. I look at it as like, if I do enough or have it under control, then I'll avoid the pain, whatever the perceived pain is of that moment.
Right. So we've just talked generically about, top 10 hits that people tend to, and I identify with a bunch of them. And as a 4, I can talk about mine in a moment. But for you personally, top 5 hits.
Well, I mean, one, so a negative one would be saying like, come on. Like just at random moments when I'm in between projects, like, come on, let's go. And it's not in a positive, like, you can do it. It's like, come on, get your act together. I think that's one. I was surprised during the research and writing the book how many of my sentences ended with the punctuation, you idiot. Like when I really kind of stepped into my thoughts, I was like, wait a second, that's like, where's that coming from? What is that? So that was a surprise for me of how many of my kind of soundtracks had a negative tinge. I would say another one would be, all right, just a little more. I talked to a friend of ours the other day, and I said, if I want to get 10 things done and I actually accomplish 12, the soundtrack I hear is, well, then it could have been 15. So I don't get to celebrate, wow, I 10 was the goal, but I did 12. It goes, I mean, if you could do 12, then 15. So that idea of like, just a little bit more. I would say that, that's another one. And then this sense of like, did I make the most of the opportunity? Was there something else I could have done? Like it was good, but is there a different thing I could have done? Did I maximize the opportunity? Those are some that I think that I listen to.
Is that an expression of going to the low side of 1?
It could be, or he could be a 3. And that's something we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I said it, right? Was because before we started recording, you're like, I'm a 7, I'm a 7, but boy, sometimes I think I'm a 3.
I've had a number of people go, I think you're really a 3, and you present as a 7, but you're a 3. So that's why I was curious.
Well, here's where they can get confused.
Yeah.
One is they're both optimistic.
Okay.
They're both very future oriented.
What's the main difference between a 3 and a 7?
Well, a 3 is more focused typically than a 7 is.
Okay.
A 3 will not take as many risks as a 7 will.
I don't take a lot of risks.
Okay, they're calculated risk takers because 3s are much more afraid of failure than a 7 is, right? So the unconscious motivation of the 3 is a need to succeed, to appear successful, and to avoid failure at all costs.
Huh. Yeah, see, that feels like something that I don't like. For me, like when I look at the risks we've taken, I haven't seen them that way because I've known, okay, here's the contingency plans. Here's the and I think, I have a hard time doing Instagram stories or YouTube because it's recorded where I can riff, but if I'm gonna look embarrassed and I lock up, like people go, oh, just do a quick video about, and I go, no, so I'm writing a script, I'm gonna do this thing.
That's me.
Yeah.
But for a whole different reason, right?
Yep.
If I'm just riffing and talking,
I
always tell people like, we're doing what was it? I don't know, some project that management put before us the other day, and I was like, please let it be interview style.
Yeah.
Please. Because if you put me on a teleprompter, it has to be on a teleprompter because otherwise I freak out.
No, when somebody said, well, and part of it is my job is public speaking. So I get to go to all these companies and it's really fun. But my presentation style, it feels natural and warm and funny. And so you could see it and go, oh, he just kind of does that. Where like they don't know I prepare like a maniac. Yeah. Like even if it's a speech I've done before, I do a dry run and I'm writing down with Sharp like, oh, that's a different idea. That's like, it's all prepared. And so when somebody goes, hey, just do some cool riffs on Instagram stories, I'm like, I'm going to try it 10 times. Get frustrated and then be like, I'll write a tweet because that's writing and I know how to write.
Right. Hey everybody, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute counseling session. And this is why some people can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for a long time and never really get anywhere. This is why I'm such a believer of intensive counseling and my friends at Restoring the Soul in Colorado, created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Now listen, if you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough, you need to get in touch with my friend Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors at Restoring the Soul. If you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can help you. As a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationships. All right, so let's just go back to the 3 thing for a second.
I think that threes also tie to 1, as does 7, but threes have a real perfectionist side for a different reason, right? They want things to be excellent, right? They also want to present well.
Yeah.
So, get it right.
Well, will threes try things they know they can't win?
No.
Okay.
It's hard for them.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
I
I
have
have
an
a-
aversion to risk.
Well, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say they have an aversion. I'd say that they're very measured and calculated about risk. So a 7 makes a great entrepreneur. Threes tend to make great CEOs, right? Because that 7 energy of entrepreneur, you got to be really open to risk
Yeah.
and be like, well, it might work, it might not, but let's go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And the 3 is much more deliberate, right? It's like, okay, well, we're gonna take a risk, but we're gonna do this, that, and this, and mitigate the possibility of failure,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't want to fail. Or like I have a 3 friend of mine. I won't tell you who it is because we share this person. It's
Garth Brooks,
No,
isn't it?
it's Garth Brooks. But he said that he took up golf and then, he went in, he like took lessons 3 days a week because all the clients did, and he wanted to play golf with them.
Yeah.
And then he realized after about 4 months of 3 lessons a week that he was never going to be an awesome golfer. So he just gave it up.
I hired a table tennis coach. Like I did that here in Nashville.
Wow.
It's difficult in Nashville. We don't have a good table tennis community, I discovered. But my wife was like, you're a workaholic and you need a hobby. And I was like, I've always loved ping pong. So I didn't just buy a table. I went to the Team USA certified website,
Right.
looked up the 2 coaches, found one, asked them both to coach me. One said he'd evaluate me. And then like a couple weeks later, I'm in some random house in Antioch while an elderly man from mainland China throws ping pong balls at me and yells, kill, kill, kill. And I was like, and my wife eventually goes, I asked you to get a hobby because you're a workaholic and you found a way to turn table tennis into a workaholic activity.
Kill.
And I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, it was a big bucket of like, and he wasn't telling me I should kill it. He was telling me if you hit that weak stuff back to me, I would have killed it. So he was telling I would have killed that shot.
Wow.
I bought a carbon fiber handle paddle with a carry case because I'm not a chump. Like I went all the way in. Like
That's hilarious.
and and so when you say your friend, like at least golf, like people take lessons. Like
Right.
the list of people who have hired a table tennis coach is probably one John Acuff long at this point.
I did that, by the
Yes.
way, with cornhole.
You didn't hire a cornhole coach.
Oh yeah, I got.
What, you went to a frat house? Like that's where you hire. That's where you hire a cornhole coach.
I did.
They have those like professionals on ESPN now.
They'll
in cornhole.
professionalize anything.
Oh yeah, I relapsed.
Yeah.
I got myself real drunk because that's the only way you can win a cornhole.
Oh yeah.
You gotta be.
You gotta be loose.
You gotta be loose.
Yeah.
You gotta be deep loose. You gotta be eating like guacamole.
Oh yeah. Distracted, yelling at your wife Rhonda.
Yeah.
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 I
Thrown
get
up
it.
in the bushes.
I
You got to
get
do
it.
the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Right. Well, there is a real three-ish quality to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
And you have a lot of three-ish language thrown around. It's amazing. As I was listening to you just self-describe how many times you were talking about doing, done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just all about the doing.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So we'll keep entertaining this idea that possibly a 3 is in the room.
I know I'm not a 9.
But I mean, just because you're funny, by the way, just because you're funny and an optimistic person, it's a stereotype that you would be a 7.
Yeah.
But that's not a type.
But then when they get to really know me, I think they're like, oh, that like I have a lot of control issues. Like I want things a certain way. Like,
Yes.
And so it's the whole thing's fascinating to me. I know I'm not a 9. I know I'm not an 8, but like 7 and 3 is tricky to me.
And both of those are driven personalities, but for different reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and 7s, how distractible are you?
Very, very distractible. But like when I lock in, I set a timer and I'm like, okay, I got to write for the next 60 minutes. I'm pretty like, okay, I got to stay on this, but it's not easy.
How productivity minded are you?
Very.
Do you read books on productivity?
Oh yeah. Constantly. I brought one with me in case I got here early. It's in the
you'd have
in the
something
car right now.
you could work on.
Yeah, because I'm trying to read 10 pages of a success book every day in the month of August as part of a test. And so
A success book.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's 3-ish.
I think we're zeroing in on it, Anthony.
Yeah.
Is your wife into the Enneagram?
No, I mean she's a 5, but she would say like, I don't know what she would say I am. But she's an investigator.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Y'all are different.
Yeah, very different. Yeah.
Okay. So when I say that succeeding is important, when you were a younger man, how much of your self-esteem was derived from being a success?
Not a lot, but it took me a long time to kind of figure some stuff out. Like my 20s were just kind of a mess. Like I was kind of a knucklehead until like mid 30s. So it really was. And now I feel like I'm like, oh, there's like, I'm starting to see the dials. I want to turn them as often and as fast as possible because I look at my 20s and I go, oh man, like I could have done more with my 20s. Or, I like in college, my wife and I talk about that because we both went to the same college, Stanford University in Birmingham. And she'll go, oh, my senior year was amazing because I only had to take X amount of classes. And I go, oh, mine was really difficult because I never planned a schedule. Like I was the dude walking to a 6 a.m. step aerobics class because I missed the registration for like the classes a junior should be able to take because they're a junior. And so I just kind of look at my high school, or my college, my 20s, like I didn't do much. And now I almost feel like I'm trying to do even more because I look back at that and go, I didn't accomplish the stuff I wanted to accomplish.
And now here you are, an accomplished writer, podcaster, and speaker, and all that stuff. Table tennis
aficionado.
Yeah.
But I don't even think about it like that. When somebody's like, you've written 7 books, I don't really even think about it like that. Somebody asked me, am I good at celebrating? And I was like, no, like I'm already on to the next thing. Like I barely, so that's something I think about.
3s and 7s do the same thing for different reasons. So I can see where the confusion is here.
Right.
And they're both assertive types. Yeah. Whenever you want something, you just go and get it.
Yeah.
Or you take it.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Sure.
If there's an obstacle in front,
yeah.
God bless it. You know, because it's either going to get run over or run around.
Yeah.
Right. One or the other. So when you think about your personality, would you say it's characterized more by gluttony, meaning, because you had a phrase earlier, just a little more.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like, if a little is good, more must be better. Right. Where you're just kind of like you can't find enough pleasurable experiences, interesting, fascinating experiences to jam into 1 minit. It's like you're always trying to shove them into every single minute.
Yeah.
Or is it more like a little bit like, and this could be hard because you're a public speaker, is it a little bit more like your passion, if you will, is more about deceit, meaning wanting to present yourself to other people in such a way all the time that you want to win their admiration and you want them to be impressed by you and say, oh my gosh, this guy he's the best. I mean, he's like...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can be pretty compulsive on like, if one book is good, 5 book, like getting 5 books on this topic is good, or if running X amount of miles is good, like I have to be deliberate to not overrun and get hurt, that kind of thing. So I can definitely be compulsive. And I think there was a time when the admiration, I've moved past the time where I can surprise people, where when I was in my late 20s, like if I went and spoke at Catalyst and nobody had ever heard of me and it was a breakout and like 50 people came, it was like, wow, I've never, but now that's my expectation. Like if Microsoft hires me to go talk to their Xbox team about performance, like I need to crush it. There's nobody that should go, oh, that was really good. Like they have that expectation. So I'm kind of like, okay, I don't look for the surprise of that anymore. But my wife and I always joke that like one of my soundtracks or narratives is like you're in the football stadium and the quarterback gets hurt and the coach goes, is there anybody here that knows how to throw a football? And you go, I do. And you walk down from the crowd and you win the game on a 99-yard Hail Mary. Like that idea of like, you're one moment away from like this massive thing, is kind of one of the narratives that I have to push back on so that I don't get frustrated with, okay, this thing takes time. Like books take time. Building a business takes time. And so, okay, what does that time look like? And how do I give myself to it versus going, I want it all to happen right now. I want it all immediately. right now. That's one of my narratives, definitely.
You were a knucklehead in your 20s?
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean? I don't understand that.
Well, like in college, freshman year, I got a 2.4 the first semester, and was because I had a Massachusetts-sized chip on my shoulder. I was this Massachusetts guy, came down to college in Alabama.
I was about to say, how did you get from that's a different story, but keep going.
Yeah, and so then like they tell me you're gonna lose your scholarships if you don't have a 3.0. So I build kind of like the perfect version of myself at Christmas, and I come back and I crush it. I get a 4.0. Like people are like, you're like a different person, and I'm like a machine. Now I crash in the summer because I white knuckled the whole semester, and I don't repeat it the third semester. Like I go right back to, and I told that story forever about like, oh look, I was able to turn it around, and then I realized like maybe about 2 years ago, like I don't like the character in that story. Like I don't like the person. I was telling my daughter that story, and I was like, ugh, because it's also the dumbest, hardest way to get a 3.0. To have a 2.4 and then need perfection on the back end. And so that's what I mean is like potential was there, but I would go, I would date somebody who was into raves, and I'd be going to raves, junior year. And like that, nobody does super well at life when they're actively going to like warehouse raves until 5 a.m. Like that's not a path. So I mean like stuff like that. And then I met my wife, but I really didn't know my career or what I could do. I was a copywriter at Bose and Staples and Home Depot, but it really wasn't until I started blogging and going, wait a second, I think I have some ideas to share. And if I pour myself into them, like some fun stuff can happen. And so that's what I mean. I never felt like I had a path. I always felt like anytime people would kind of go, hey, and this probably gets to a deeper question, hey, there's something really good that we could build with you at this company, I'd jump to another company. And then I'd wow them, and they'd be like, this is amazing. And I'd get bored of that, and I'd jump to another one. So I was a huge job jumper I'd stay. And I remember after about 6 months, I would start to every morning in the shower go, if I stay 9 months, will that look better on a resume? If I stay 13 months, I can say more than a year. Like I was ready. And then. So
did you get bored? Is that
bored? I had kind of I feel like when you're young, you have all the confidence and none of the experience. And then when you hit your 40s, sometimes I see the flip. You have a ton of experience, but less confidence because you know what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I had a ton of confidence, no experience. And so, yeah, I think I would just get bored. But then when I started my own company 8 years ago, I couldn't quit me. Like there was no like, okay, I'm in a corner, jump to something else. I had to really focus and kind of be deliberate and build some systems versus just jump.
All right, let's go back to your new book, Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking. In your thinking mind, what role does anxiety play in it?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of the manifestations of overthinking. I don't think everyone who overthinks is anxious. I don't think that was one of the things we talked about in the book is that it's not a personality trait. It's not like a certain type of person does it and other people don't. I think it can turn. Into anxiety, especially if you don't. Like what I say is pull the thread. What's the thought behind the thought? Like right. Thoughts travel in bunches. So often if you'll say, well, this is what I'm frustrated by, like an example would be somebody says, I hate my coworker. They're unqualified. They're unqualified to get all these opportunities. And if you'll sit with them though, and kind of pull the thread, often it'll be that the person is really bold, or they're really confident in meetings, or they volunteer for stuff. And the person who's frustrated wants to be braver. And so a good version of that is I get to be brave. I want to be brave too, versus going, Boris is unqualified or Mark is unqualified. So if I can get them to pull the thread, it's often there's a handful of thoughts that are kind of driving all these things. And then once you know that, you can, like I said, retire it. You can, the three things I talk about are retiring your broken ones, replacing them with new ones, and then repeating the new ones so often they become as automatic as the old ones.
So I agree. But I do think that there have to be some really intentional practices because thoughts are incredibly powerful. So powerful that one evolutionary psychologist I know would say that you don't have thoughts, your thoughts think you. Because your brain secretes thoughts I mean, like your thyroid, it just secretes thoughts.
Yeah.
You
Like a
can't
sweat gland.
Yeah, it's just they're just going.
Yeah.
And some of them, go faster than you can watch them, right? So, for me, and we talk a lot about this. We've done a podcast on it. It requires powers of self-observation.
Well, so let me give you one power of self-observation, like
Okay.
a simple trick people can do. It takes 30 seconds. So people say, well, how do I know if I have broken soundtracks that I need to retire? And so I always say, all you have to do is write down a desire. Write down something you want to do. I want to move to Nashville. I want to have a family. I want to ask that girl out. I want to paint, whatever. Write down a desire and then listen to your first thoughts, because every reaction is an education. So one way to identify a broken soundtrack is I want to do this thing. And then if the first 10 things you say to yourself are why you're not qualified for that, why you're not skilled for that, why you're in the wrong city for that, then maybe there's something you should pause on and deal with that. And I also say, don't ask all your thoughts the true, helpful, kind question. Who has time for that? It's 60,000 thoughts. But it's the ones that are the loudest, the ones that are neon. And it also does take time. Like what I've learned is there's sometimes in life where a single thought, something can change an entire situation almost instantly. So an example would be if you have a difficult coworker and you just don't get along, they're so demanding, they're terrible, and you find out his wife has cancer, changes everything.
Yes.
Knowing that information changes everything. There's other times though, something's been in place for a decade. And that was what was interesting about the book. 48 hours after it came out, people said, I've already read it, I've already listened to it 3 times, and my new soundtrack isn't sticking. And I'd say, well, how long did you listen to the old one? They'd say 10 years. And I'd say, well, you gave the problem 10 years to develop and the solution 10 days. And so that's why the repetition is so important. That's why, like, one of the things in the book, we talk about symbols, that symbols have power. And the best brands in the world have known that forever. Like Yeti is a symbol. Like people put stickers on their cars to let you know how they refrigerate things.
Right.
Nobody did that in the 90s. Nobody was like, igloo.
Right.
I'm an igloo guy. If you're ever curious about how I keep stuff cold,
I got
I'm
a
an
Coleman.
igloo.
I'm a Coleman
I'm
guy.
a Coleman guy. And so like the symbol though, I always say, like, you're up against a really strong soundtrack. It's good to tie it to a symbol. Like, and the way you do a symbol, it's really simple. It has to be personal to you. It has to be visible, and it has to be simple. And one of my favorite examples is the Lance Armstrong bracelet. The reason the Live Strong bracelet worked is, one, it was personal. No one ever said, I just hate cancer, the disease. I don't like diseases. I have an eczema necklace. I wear like disease jewelry. Nobody said that. It always was personal. It said, my uncle died from cancer. My mom. The second thing was it was visible. Nike could have made it skin tone. They could have made it gray. They didn't. They made it bright yellow. And the third was it was simple to use. The symbol always has to be simple. Nobody's confused by a bracelet. Nobody's like, oh, you put the arm part into the whole part. And so I'll tell people, okay, if you've got a symbol, like one for me, it was 2 weeks before the book came out. You've released books. Like, that's a crazy mental space. We are going to Jackson Hole, Wyoming with my family. And I knew that I had evidence from my past that I could be physically present and mentally or emotionally absent for moments.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't want that to happen. So I wrote a soundtrack down that said, don't miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Thought that, worked on that. And then when I got to Jackson Hole, they had pine cones all over the street. And they look different from the ones I have at home. And I was present enough to notice a detail like that pine cone is different from our pine cones. And I took it with me, and it sits on my desk right now because there's going to be other moments where I'm going to be tempted to miss something,
right.
And that symbol helps. So a lot of the times, it's kind of like writing. I never sit down with a blank piece of paper. I always bring ideas with me. I tell people all the time, I don't believe in writer's block. I believe in idea bankruptcy. Like, if you are collecting and curating ideas, when you sit down with a blank piece of paper, they can't wait to get out there. Is it easy? Of course not. But it's the same way I'd never tell somebody, just change a thought like a light bulb, and then you're done. Like, it's a process. It can take a lot of time. It can take a lot of activities. It can take symbols, but it's worth it. And when you start to notice that you're thinking differently, you want to do it more.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that fascinates me here is one of the practices that has made an enormous difference in my life is a daily practice of mindfulness meditation. Mm-hmm. I sit for 20 minutes twice a day on a cushion.
Twice a day?
Twice a day.
Okay.
Yeah, early morning, late afternoon. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I miss that late afternoon because something comes up, but
sure.
Generally speaking, twice a day. And what it has done is it's decluttered my mind. Mm-hmm. And when you do a regular meditation practice, you become intimately aware of what your thought stream is.
Yeah.
And you'll see patterns. And so one of the things I do when I'm in meditation, I just focus on my breath. It's very, very simple, right? Try to quiet the mind. Of course, the mind is secreting thoughts. They're not your enemy.
Yeah.
You just don't want to grab them and you just want, every time you get distracted and you get lost into a thought story, you just bring back your attention to the present moment, right? Right. So what I've learned is we do this thing called noting, right? So if my thought goes to, what am I going to do later today? I just look at the thought and I go, planning. Or if something comes up about, I had an argument with somebody, I'll go, resentment. Because sometimes the feeling comes up with it.
Yeah.
Right. Or if another thought comes up like, 20 years ago, I was a knucklehead and I didn't regret. And I don't judge it. I don't evaluate it. I don't try to fix it. I don't try to do anything. I just note it. And I just start to notice how many times my thoughts migrate, my attention migrates towards certain thoughts, right? Now, the benefit of the beauty of it is that builds up the power of self-observation. Because as my mind slows all day long as a result, it does all day long. It's just not slows, it's calmer. And what it's given me is the ability to observe my thoughts in real time. And when I see them, I don't think of them as thoughts as much as I think about them as stories. It's like, okay, my brain has now launched a story. It's the I'm too old story, or I'm the too young story, right? Because to me, the narrative piece is grippier for me. You know what I mean? It's like the thought is a story. Now, that story can be fictional, but until you challenge it, it's nonfiction.
Well, it's going to tell you it's true.
Yes.
You're going to be like, this is...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I oftentimes find myself doing is just saying, okay, is this story true? Right? Because I'm locked inside of a narrative right now about who I am and my perspective on how the world works. Right? I mean, let's face it. Some of our greatest authors didn't write their greatest books until they were in their 60s. Right? So that's...
John Maxwell did his first nonfiction at like 44, 45.
Yeah. So there you go. Right? Those are stories. They're self-limiting, self-defeating stories that we get locked into, which is part of the reason I love this book, Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking, because I do think in our contemporary age, with its distractibility and just the way that our brain is physically wired, overthinking, man, is...
Well, but think about this too, and we don't give this enough conversation. Most of this stuff is new as far as the phone. Like, it's not 100 years old and we now know how to deal with it. We're the pioneers. Like, people 50 years from now will go back and go, how did they first even deal with all that amount of information that they got?
Right.
I mean, for me, it just hit me the other day that other than my phone app and other than maybe the calculator, every other app on my phone is selling me something. I decided to carry around the world's largest infomercial in my pocket. Like, Instagram has 10,000 employees, and their job is distract Ian. Like, that's their job. Like, whether a secretary, whether a developer, like, that's their job, is to go, we want more of his attention, more of his time, which turns into more revenue. So I always try to give people I tell them this is challenging because it should be challenging. In the 1980s, you didn't have whole companies that were billion-dollar companies in the distraction business. You had newspapers, you certainly had TV and all that, but we have so much more of that. I don't think we've developed as many tools for that as things that are stealing it. Like, we haven't scaled our tools for focus or meditation or whatever with the same amount of eagerness as we have our tools for distraction. And that's why, to me, it's challenging.
Yeah.
That's good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah. I can't wait to read it.
I know,
Honestly,
man.
yeah.
And I love the metaphor of soundtracks because we all have favorite
right.
soundtracks in our brains.
Yep.
Right?
Well, I picked that because a soundtrack in a movie often changes the whole moment without you even noticing. Your whole body changes. I mean, there's studies about just hearing the sound of the Jaws soundtrack gives you a physical change. And so, yeah, for me, it was one that I thought, okay, this is a handle. I consider my job to be a handle maker. We have enough ideas in the world. We don't have enough handles on them to pick them up and take them into our lives. And so I love to put handles on ideas. And I felt like, okay, soundtracks is a handle I think some people can pick up.
Yeah. Well, plus soundtracks and music are so sticky.
We live in Nashville. Somebody the other day said to me, why the music theme? And I was like, well, I do live in Nashville. We got a little bit of that. We got a little.
Wow, man. Fantastic. This is Jon Acuff, author of Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking.
And I have you on my podcast, which is fun.
That was a ball.
That was a blast. I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal, and I got to interview you about the goals you're working on and this next chapter of your life and what you've learned. And so that was really fun for me too.
Was it coherent?
Totally. Once we got through the technology issues, I don't know if you remember that. We had a bunch of tech issues, and I don't have an amazing producer. Like I don't have a single bearded person in my office.
Redemption.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Full circle. Full circle.
There you go. John, what are your Instagram handles or all of your social stuff that people need to know?
It's at Jon Acuff, JONACUFF. For Instagram. Twitter is the same. Acuff.me is my website. If you're like, I'd like to read the first chapter of the book, soundtracksbook.com. There's a video version, soundtrackscourse.com. And yeah, the podcast is All It Takes Is a Goal. And if you're going to listen to one episode, there's a woman named Colleen Berry who I interviewed who was a documentary filmmaker, lost her job during the dot-com bust a few years ago, had to take 4 other jobs to survive. And one of them was as a receptionist. And she said, I'm going to change my soundtracks, change my mindset. And now she's the CEO of that company.
Wow.
And so it's a really fun receptionist to CEO story. Wow. And you know it's a good episode when you're taking notes for your own life. It's not for a question. It's going, I got to. And Colleen Berry on All It Takes Is a Goal is a great start.
Right.
That's powerful.
You know, when I was on John's show, he actually got up and walked away, made a Keurig coffee, and then came back. There was no note taking.
I said, Ian, tell me about the Enneagram, and then he talked for 92 minutes in a row. I didn't say a single word. I kept trying to throw in words, and he was like, "Just let me go, dude.
Yeah,
I'm Ian.
Yeah,
you know, I have 3 names.
I thought it was
names.
Oh, what are you rolling around with, Jon Acuff 2? Yeah.
No, actually, the name of the show he's on is All It Takes Is a Fool.
Oh,
and they had me on as the first
I don't
episode.
tell them the name first. I say it's about experts. And you're an expert. Yeah.
Exactly.
So funny.
But John, we want to have you back on because I'm really, I love this theme of overthinking, and Anthony's heard me talk about it a lot. You know, about the thinking mind and I'm going to turn you on to some books by some evolutionary psychologists who talk about thinking.
I'd love that.
And about negative biases. Because, there was a time when some thoughts were really helpful. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to, being paranoid was really good when you were on the Serengeti.
Exactly, because there's a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But now, in our day and age, we don't have to worry that much about it. Right. And yet we continue to do it because our brain has not caught up to modern circumstance.
Well, and modern circumstance knows that. So that's why a news headline is written a certain way.
Exactly.
I was a journalism major. Like, I get it. And so I had to delete Twitter from my phone last year, and I still use it on my computer, but I just couldn't have that much anger in my pocket. So I had to say that's a boundary for me.
Holy crap. And it plays to what you said earlier about we haven't caught up to the fact that we have this device in our pockets, right?
Well, and the other thing is our brain is not designed to read all that information.
That's right.
It can't.
No.
When I was a kid, you got you might get the New York Times once a week.
Yeah.
Right. And you didn't know everything that was happening in Bhutan because it did not make the New York Times. Right. But now, because of the 24-hour news cycle, they're running out of stories. Right. So they're going to Mongolia.
I was never mad at a governor of another state in the 1990s. Like, I didn't even know him.
Right.
Like, I didn't even, if they were doing something terrible to people in Oregon, I had no idea.
Right.
And now I know, like, there's certain governors, you're like, man, that guy, that lady, you're like, you don't even live in that state.
Right. So, it's so interesting we were talking about this because the other day, I decided I was going to write down everything that makes me miserable. Mm-hmm. Okay? I said, all right, I'm just going to write down because I found myself, my brain overthinking negative things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, this crap's got to stop. I'm just going to write down, because here's what I said to myself. And I got such a relief when I actually said it aloud. I just said, I'm miserable. I am
just admitting it.
I just admitted it. You know what?
Naming it. Yeah,
I'm a pretty miserable person inside. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't an easy thing to say, but the moment I said it, I was like, okay, well, now I can do something about this. It's like I just
How long was the list?
It was pretty long. No, but it was things like the news makes me miserable.
Yeah.
Or drinking too much coffee makes me miserable. And yet I keep doing it. Yeah. Right? It's like it makes me jangly and crazy.
Oh, there's like me looking at certain social media accounts make me miserable. Mm.
Yes.
And my thumb is like, but we're going to go there
real
fast.
Right. So social media can make me miserable, right? I wrote down this whole list of things, right? And I just made some changes. And one of them was, I cannot watch the news. I cannot look at the news every day. I am going to assume that if something really important happens I need to know about, someone will mention it to me.
Well, that's the whole lie of being informed. Like what are you doing with, like, you didn't, other than receiving misery, you didn't change your day with that information.
No.
Like for me, that was during the middle of the pandemic. There was a news program I was watching. They had a rolling death ticker like a slot machine. That wasn't help.
Right.
And then I'd go, I wonder why I'm so like depressed and like, it's weird. I wonder if there's a connection. Like, and I wasn't doing anything with the information. And so I just feel like we're meant to live locally. And there's some global things that we're not like comfortable with, and we don't know how to live with. And so I love that you made a list of that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I guess it was about 15 or 15.
That's pretty
things
good.
on it.
I mean, I think it feels like it could be 100 some days.
Right. Well, then I had to make some changes. So I decided I was going to run in the mornings. I don't like running in the mornings, but it's like if I don't, I'm going to get up, I'm going to read the paper, or start scrolling.
What don't you like about running in the mornings?
My body is sort of like, this hurts.
Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
Late afternoon, 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
My body's like, let's go.
Yeah.
And part of it used to be because I had 5 or 6 cups of coffee, running the ship.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to go out and run 6-minute miles.
Yeah.
But so I do get up in the morning, I run 10.
That's so funny.
10-minute miles. Whatever. Anyway, John, Soundtracks: The Surprising Solution to Overthinking. Everybody get on Amazon, go to local booksellers, and check out this wonderful book about, it sounds like taking control of your mindscape.
Yeah. It's 100% what it's about.
Yeah.
The last thing I'd say, because it was it relates to you and the news. One of the studies we put in there was from NYU. Daniel Kahneman wrote about it.
Oh, yeah.
And they brought 2 groups of college students in and said, we want you to make sentences out of these word banks. And so they gave them some words and said, make sentences. First group, normal words. Second group, there were words in there hidden about being old. Words like Florida and retired and slow. And they said, okay, the second part is walk down the hall and take the second part of the test. But that's where they secretly were testing them. They tested how long it took each group to walk down the hall. And the students who had been exposed to the old words physically walked slower. Just reading words about old age changed their physical actions. And they've reversed the study multiple times. So yeah, watching the news, you might go, you're missing out. You're like, no, that's having a physical impact on you.
Oh, no, it does.
Your friends have a physical impact on you, your conversations. And so I think it's awesome when people can go, yeah, I'm going to put some of this stuff on a diet, see what happens.
Oh, it's made a huge difference. Yeah. I mean, really. I mean, just a huge difference. Anthony.
Yes.
Great episode, huh?
Yeah, this is good, man. Can't wait for our people to hear it.
Is there like a best of you could already get me scheduled for or something?
But you won't be it because you didn't actually say I was the best person on your show.
I mean,
so
that was coming later. We were still riffing on Anthony, I felt like.
But I will say you were the best person on my show to make you feel bad.
It's a collection. It's not just one person. It's like you have a highlight reel. I've seen people do that. That seems like a thing podcast.
Are you saying that I'm on the highlight reel?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, right.
I've only done 35 episodes. You can't. That's like when a band releases a Christmas album, their second album. I gotta earn a highlight reel, dude.
That's hilarious.
Hey, Typology Tribe, remember these words. May you have love, may you have joy, may you have peace, may you have healing, may you have rest. Until next time.